Hey, it's Aeon. Yes, I hurt my finger, but that's not going to stop me. Today I'm back with the Xi25, and in the last video I built the frame. This video is going to be a quick cut compilation of how I installed the components. So let's jump right in. These are the motors. The Xing 1404 3800 kV. Here is a Vista with the Polar Nano that I have spare. And this is the Tmotor 45 amp all-in-one. It's the first time I'm using this board. And the good old trusty crossfire receiver with the Immortal T antenna. A couple of things I am missing are GPS and some small 3D prints, which I have ordered and will install before the flight. But for now, I want to get this built and flying. So anyway, Hyperlapse, go! Haha, look how fast my hands move. Okay, so as per quad building rules, you have to hold up the motor to the frame to see how it's going to look first. And damn, that does look great. So, let's start attaching them. Being careful that the screws do not touch the windings, I'm going to screw these in. Not super tight, but tight. The next thing to install is this Tmotor all-in-one. Folding the motor wires out of the way, I install the all-in-one upside down with the arrow facing front as recommended by Oddity. I put a few bolts in to secure it and lay the wires out roughly to the right length. Be careful here, as snipping them too short is an absolute pain in the ass. Okay, so time to get pre-tinning. I'm going to apply a liberal amount of flux here. I cannot fuck this up as it's the only one I have. So after carefully applying solder to all of the pads I'm going to use, this is what we have. I'm going to add a little extra solder to the battery connections and then move on to the motor wires. Now, I'm not soldering for NASA, so don't judge me, but they're clean, shiny, and stuck on there good. So after that's done, I'm going to think about a capacitor, and this 35 volt 470 microfarad capacitor is perfect, so here I am installing it. Now, if you're using 4S, technically you don't need it, but it's a really good idea to run one. Time for the hardest part of any build, getting the power connection done properly. The technique I'm using is honed over time and works for me, but basically you need a bunch of heat, a big chisel tip, and lots of flux. I'm going to use IPA to clean the flux off of the board and any contaminants that may have got there during soldering. Flux is an acid and it will eat away at your electronics. Once you get that figured out, it's time to slap the capacitor on top and move on to the next component. I think we will install a crossfire first. Now these are small wires and pads, so I changed to a smaller tip. We're going to pre-tin and flux these two. I'm going to connect the 5 volt, the ground, the TX, and RX. We should have control via UART1 now, which I will set up in beta flight in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button for more content like this. Here I get the multimeter out on continuity mode just to check a few things. Mainly that there is no short between voltage pads and ground. Don't be worried if the multimeter beeps for a second when on the XT60. That's the capacitor charging. Just make sure it doesn't constantly beep. Next thing to install is the video system. Here is my Vista Polar Nano, which is a good choice. However, I would really like to put an 03 in there. To help me afford one of these, you could subscribe for just one of your schmeckles on my Patreon. It all helps. After looking at the pinout of this AIO, it doesn't seem to have a 12 volt or 9 volt for the Vista. So I'm going to have to get creative and attach it to the battery terminal. I'm going to finish attaching the all-in-one to the frame, position all of the parts for final fitting. This is the most fiddly part, getting all those wires to sit inside cleanly. My advice here would be to use the Vista with the plug on it to go straight into the board, but I like to solder. This camera needs a few washes, and I need to mount this antenna. Also, we have these props to go on, which are the Gemfan D63 5-blade props. And we are going to install them in the props out direction. And you'll notice that I haven't screwed these props down. That's because in the next video, I'm going to be flashing the flight controller and setting up a new Betaflight tune. So check that video out, and I'll see you again soon. Later.